Welcome to another gripping episode of True Crime Revealed, where we dive deep into real-life cases that haunt and captivate us. I'm Donna, your host, and today we're unraveling a case that shook the entire UK, the murder of Libby Squire. Picture this, a 21-year-old college student just a few feet from her front door after a fun night out with friends. She was almost safe, but in the blink of an eye, she was gone. Libby Squire was snatched right from her own street in Hull, England, and this story will take us on a heart-wrenching journey from hope to despair. Back in 2019, the city of Hull was on edge. A string of crimes targeting women had left locals terrified. Streets that once felt safe now seemed like hunting grounds for predators. Women were warned not to walk alone at night, and families lived in constant worry whenever loved ones stepped out. Against this backdrop, Libby Squire, a vibrant student at the University of Hull, became the center of a tragedy no one saw coming. She wasn't the first victim, but her story hit the community like a tidal wave. Libby was a young woman, full of life, soaking up her college years. But on the night of January 31st, 2019, everything changed forever. After being turned away from a nightclub for being too drunk, her friends called her a cab to get her home safely. The taxi dropped her off right in front of her place on Wellesley Avenue, just steps from her door. But instead of heading inside, Libby, hammered and disoriented, wandered off into the freezing night. Little did anyone know, a predator was lurking, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. If you're into true crime stories told with heart and respect for the victims, hit that subscribe button to stay in the loop. I pour my all into researching these cases, and I drop a new video every week. Subscribing is totally free, and it'll keep you updated on the most compelling cases out there. Today, we're digging into what happened to Libby Squire and why this case isn't just a personal tragedy, it's a wake-up call for society. Libby's case isn't just about a young woman whose life was stolen. It's a chilling reminder of the dangers hiding in plain sight and how a single moment can lead to irreversible consequences. Join me as we piece together Libby's story, the people who loved her, and the monster who tore it all apart. To truly grasp the tragedy of Libby Squire, we need to know who she was and what made her so special to her family and friends. Liberty Ann Squire, known as Libby, was born on January 1st, 1998, in Buckinghamshire, England. The eldest of 4 siblings, she grew up surrounded by the love of her parents, Lisa and Russell. Libby was the kind of person who lit up a room, always ready with a laugh or a kind word. But behind that bright smile was a journey full of challenges. In high school, Libby faced some tough times. She battled anxiety and depression, feelings that left her struggling to find her place. She also dealt with body image issues, which led to an eating disorder for a while. Those struggles could have broken anyone, but Libby was a fighter. With her family's support and her own grit, she pulled herself out of the darkness and started rebuilding her life. After graduating high school, Libby enrolled at the University of Hull to study philosophy. That's when everything changed for her. College wasn't just about hitting the books, it was where Libby found herself. She grew more confident, more outgoing, and embraced the freedom of being a young adult. She made friends, got involved in campus life, and started to shine as the best version of herself. Libby also found love with her boyfriend, Connor, who she'd been with for 3 years. To him, Libby wasn't just a girlfriend, she was his everything. At Hull, Libby was thriving. She loved exploring new places, hitting up parties, and living the college life to the fullest. Her friends said she had a knack for making everyone feel at ease with a smile that could melt away stress. Gone was the shy girl from high school. Libby had found her groove, her purpose, and a bright future ahead. She dreamed of becoming a journalist, traveling the world, and leaving her mark. But all those dreams came crashing down on a frigid night in Hull. Libby wasn't just a victim in a news story. She was a daughter, a friend, a young woman who fought hard to become her best self, only to have it all ripped away by someone who didn't deserve to cross her path. As we dive into the darker details of this case, let's hold on to the fact that Libby was so much more than a headline. Join me as we uncover what happened on that fateful night. Let's rewind to the night of January 31st, 2019. A night that started like any other in Libby Squire's college life, but ended in unthinkable tragedy. Hull was gripped by a brutal winter chill, with temperatures plunging and streets cloaked in fog. Libby, fresh off her 21st birthday, decided to join her friends for a night out. She threw on a black dress and a matching jacket, shot a quick, goodnight text to her boyfriend Connor, and headed out, leaving her phone behind. No one could have guessed that text would mark the start of a mystery that would haunt us all. The night kicked off with promise. Around 9 p.m., Libby met her crew at a bar in downtown Hull. They tossed back drinks, caught up, and soaked in the carefree vibe of their youth. After a few rounds, the group decided to hit the Welly, a popular nightclub in town. But things took a turn when they got there. The bouncers at the Welly wouldn't let Libby in. She'd had too much to drink and was visibly out of it. Frustrated but with no other choice, Libby had to call it a night. Her friends, instead of sticking with her, called a cab and told the driver to take her home. They paid the fare and headed back to the club, a decision they'd later regret for the rest of their lives. The cab driver, a total stand-up guy, did his job perfectly. Around 11:30 p.m., he dropped Libby off right in front of her place on Wellesley Avenue, just a few feet from her door. Libby stumbled out of the cab, but instead of heading inside, she did the unthinkable. Wasted and confused, she turned around and wandered back down the street, dropping her house keys on the sidewalk. Security cameras caught Libby staggering along Beverly Road, about half a mile from her place, around 11:40 p.m. She looked lost, sometimes falling and struggling to get up. A few passers-by later recalled seeing a young woman crying, clearly in distress. Some even saw her take a spill and fight to stand, but heartbreakingly, no one stopped to help. Eventually, two kind strangers stepped in. They found Libby agitated and refusing help, so they did what they could, settling her on a nearby bench before moving on, hoping she'd be okay. Back at the club, Libby's friends started to panic. It had been way too long, and Libby hadn't texted to say she'd made it home, something she always did, no matter how drunk. They tried calling, but her phone, left at home, just rang unanswered. A sinking feeling hit them, and they bolted from the club, racing to Libby's place. They pounded on her door, shouting her name, but got nothing. Then one of them spotted her keys lying in the snow. That's when they knew something was horribly wrong. The moment Libby's friends found her keys in the snow, dread turned to reality. Libby Squire, the vibrant 21-year-old, was gone. They didn't waste a second, calling her parents and alerting the police. Luckily, the Humberside police didn't pull the usual wait 24 to 48 hours routine. They saw the gravity of the situation and jumped into action, launching what would become one of the biggest missing person searches in their history. The cops started by exploring every angle. Could Libby have run off after a breakdown? She'd struggled with depression and anxiety in the past, but her family and friends were adamant. Libby was the happiest she'd ever been. She had plans to travel, dreams of becoming a journalist, and no signs of wanting to bolt. With the runaway theory off the table, investigators turned to a darker possibility. Libby might have fallen victim to a crime. The search for Libby was massive. Over 100 officers hit the ground, combing every inch of Hull, side streets, remote areas, even tough spots like rivers, drains, and abandoned buildings. No stone was left unturned. They checked hospitals, bus stations, anywhere she might have wandered. The freezing Hull weather added urgency. With temps below 32 degrees and Libby in just a thin dress and jacket, hypothermia was a real threat. Meanwhile, Libby's parents, Lisa and Russell, were relentless. They went on TV, held press conferences, and begged anyone with information to come forward. Their pleas broke hearts across the community, shining a spotlight on the agony of a family clinging to hope. The police released details of Libby's outfit, a black dress and jacket, to jog people's memories and spark leads. A key focus was reviewing security footage. Hull was packed with cameras, especially near Libby's place, which was a blessing and a curse. Investigators faced hundreds of hours of video, a grueling task requiring patience and precision. They started with the moment the cab dropped her off at 11:30 p.m. and traced her path through the footage. The first clip showed Libby stumbling down Beverly Road, clearly drunk, sometimes falling and picking herself up. Those images confirmed how vulnerable she was and fueled fears she'd been targeted by a predator. The Hull community rallied too, with hundreds of volunteers joining the police to scour public areas. But as hours turned to days with no sign of Libby, hope started to fade. Investigators knew every passing moment lowered the odds of finding her alive. Still, they didn't let up, and the security footage was about to deliver a game-changing clue that would shift the entire case. As the search for Libby Squire dragged into tense days, investigators pinned their hopes on security footage. Those grainy clips were more than just evidence. They were the only light in the darkness of this case, and they didn't disappoint, revealing a chilling truth that brought police closer to the killer. Let's go back to the night of January 31st, 2019, to see what the cameras captured and how they unraveled a horrifying mystery. Starting at 11:30 p.m., when the cab dropped Libby off on Wellesley Avenue, detectives traced her movements through dozens of cameras across Hull. They spotted her staggering along Beverly Road about half a mile from home around 11:40 p.m. She looked completely out of it, sometimes collapsing on the sidewalk and struggling to stand. Those clips are gut-wrenching to watch. A young woman, drunk and vulnerable, alone in the freezing dark, unaware of the danger closing in. Then something caught their eye. Earlier that night, cameras picked up a silver Vauxhall Astra cruising around Beverly Road. This wasn't a one-off. The car seemed to be circling aimlessly, like the driver was hunting for something or someone. Fast forward to just before midnight, and the cameras showed Libby wobbling near a bus stop, trying to stay upright. That's when the silver car reappeared, pulling up close to her. What came next sent chills down the investigators' spines. A man got out of the car, at first walking on the opposite sidewalk, watching Libby. Then he darted across the street, approached her, and started talking. From the angle, there was no sign of a struggle or argument. Libby, too drunk to sense the danger, seemed oblivious. The two walked together, but instead of heading toward her place, they veered away, down a quieter street. Another camera caught Libby standing near the silver car with the man sitting inside, door open, legs out, like they were still chatting. Detectives noticed other cars passing by, and the guy seemed to be biding his time, maybe waiting for the street to clear. Then around 12:08 a.m., Libby got into the car. The man shut the door, hopped in the driver's seat, and peeled out into the night. The terrifying part? The camera couldn't show if Libby went willingly or was forced. Investigators rushed to the spot where that footage was recorded. After some searching, they found a critical clue. Libby's watch lying on the ground, like it had been knocked off in a struggle. That discovery solidified their fear that Libby didn't choose to get in the car. She was likely coerced. The cameras also showed the car heading toward Oak Road playing fields, a wooded, isolated area just a few minutes from Beverly Road. At night, that place was a dark, sprawling void, perfect for someone with sinister intentions. The footage painted a terrifying picture. Libby, at her most vulnerable, had been targeted by a stranger, lured or forced into his car, and taken somewhere no one could find her. Investigators now knew they were dealing with a serious crime, and that silver car was the key to tracking down the monster responsible. With the security footage pointing to a silver Vauxhall Astra, investigators had a clear target: find the man behind the wheel. After days of relentless work, they zeroed in on him. Pavel Relowicz, a 24-year-old Polish immigrant living in Hull. But who was Relowicz, and what turned him into a monster hiding in plain sight? Let's peel back the layers of this guy's double life and see the predator he really was. Pavel Relowicz was born in Poland and moved to the UK in 2015 with his wife Jagoda, also Polish. They had 2 kids, and from the outside, they looked like your average family. At the time of the case, Relowicz worked as a butcher at a meat processing plant in Malton, North Yorkshire. Co-workers called him friendly, even a cool guy to work with. He had no criminal record, no red flags in the police database to suggest he was trouble. But the truth, as we'll see, was far uglier. Beneath the facade of a devoted husband and dad, Relowicz was a creep with a twisted side. He was obsessed with sick fantasies. Starting in 2017, just 2 years after arriving in the UK, he began a spree of perverse acts. He'd sneak into people's homes, peeping on women, and sometimes couples, through windows. He stole women's underwear, adult toys, anything that fed his warped desires. He'd even flash himself in public, getting off on the fear and disgust of strangers. These weren't quirks. They were the hallmarks of a predator who thrived on control and terror. What's infuriating is that Relowicz never faced consequences for this. Women reported him, even provided fingerprints and DNA, but since he wasn't in the system, the cases went nowhere. That lack of accountability made him bolder. He was convinced he'd always get away with it, and that arrogance fueled his crimes. He lived just blocks from Libby, and her neighborhood became his playground. He'd flashed women on her street, leaving them shaken and unsafe. When the police ID'd Relowicz through the car's license plate and camera footage, they hauled him in on suspicion of Libby's disappearance. At first, he played dumb, swearing he didn't know her, but when shown the footage of him stalking and approaching her, he switched his story. He claimed he was just helping Libby, dropping her off at Oak Road playing fields and leaving her there. That lie didn't hold water, but it showed the nerve of a guy used to skating by. Ralowich wasn't some random criminal. He was a calculated predator, targeting vulnerable people to satisfy his urges. He saw Libby, a drunk and disoriented young woman, as the perfect prey. As we move forward, you'll see how the clues tightened the noose around Ralowich and exposed the horrifying truth of what he did to Libby. Nearly 2 months after Libby Squire vanished, the hope of finding her alive was fading fast. The police, her family, and the Hull community had left no stone unturned, but there was no trace of the young woman. That is until March 20th, 2019, when a heartbreaking discovery changed everything. A fisherman working on the Humber River not far from Hull spotted something floating in the water. As he got closer, he realized it was a human body. He immediately called the police, and what followed confirmed everyone's worst fears. The police rushed to the scene and recovered the body. Though it was badly decomposed after weeks in the water, one small detail stood out: a necklace around the neck with an L pendant. It was the first clue that this might be Libby. Forensic tests soon confirmed the unbearable truth. The body was indeed Libby Squire, the 21-year-old who'd gone missing on January 31st. The news hit like a sledgehammer, shattering the hearts of her family, friends, and everyone who'd joined the search. Because of the body's condition, investigators couldn't pinpoint the exact cause of death. She might have drowned, or she could have been killed before being dumped in the river. But one thing was certain: Libby had been sexually assaulted before she died. DNA analysis found traces of Pavel Relowitz, the prime suspect, on her body. This was the smoking gun tying him directly to the crime. He could no longer deny his involvement, despite his earlier claims of innocence. Finding Libby's body wasn't just a turning point in the investigation. It was the end of all hope. For her parents, Lisa and Russell, it was the moment their world collapsed. They'd spent nearly 2 months praying, searching, clinging to the belief that their daughter was still out there. Now they had to face the reality that Libby was never coming home. Their grief was compounded by rage at the brutality of her death. The Hull community was rocked too. Hundreds had joined the search, and now they grappled with the fact that Libby had been in that cold river the whole time. Memorials sprang up, with flowers and candles placed at spots where she was last seen. But alongside the sorrow was anger. People demanded answers. How could someone like Ralowitz operate freely? Why weren't his earlier creepy behaviors stopped, preventing this tragedy? Libby's body was the final piece in the search, but it opened a new chapter: the fight for justice. With DNA evidence and camera footage, the police had what they needed to take Ralowitz to trial. But would justice truly be served, and could Libby's family find any solace in their unbearable loss? Stick with me as we see how Relowitz's trial unfolded. With Libby Squire's body found and DNA evidence linking Pavel Relowitz to the crime, the police had enough to bring him to justice. His trial kicked off on January 12, 2021, almost 2 years after the night that stole Libby's life. For 5 grueling weeks, the courtroom in Hull became the focal point where justice was sought, not just for Libby, but for everyone hurt by Relowitz's actions. Let's walk through what went down in that trial and how the truth finally came to light. The prosecution laid out a clear, terrifying case against Relowitz. They painted him as a dangerous predator driven by sick obsessions. They argued that on January 31, 2019, Relowitz spotted Libby on Beverly Road, drunk and vulnerable, and saw his chance. He lured or forced her into his car, drove her to the isolated Oak Road playing fields, and sexually assaulted her. Then, to cover his tracks, he killed her and tossed her body into the Humber River like trash. The DNA on Libby's body, paired with camera footage of him stalking and approaching her, was ironclad evidence. The prosecutors stressed that Relowitz's actions weren't a one-off. He had a long history of creepy behavior: peeping, stealing underwear, flashing women. While those acts hadn't turned violent before, they showed a guy growing bolder and more dangerous. That night, Libby was just the unlucky one in his crosshairs. The prosecution called him a monster in human skin, exploiting Libby's vulnerability for his twisted gratification. Relowitz's defense team, on the other hand, threw out a flimsy story that didn't hold up. They claimed he had nothing to do with Libby's death, saying he only dropped her off at the playing fields and left. They suggested she might have died from an accident or hypothermia. But with Relowitz's DNA all over Libby, plus the camera footage and witness accounts, their argument fell apart. It's baffling why they even bothered with such a weak defense, but maybe they knew their client was beyond saving. After 5 weeks of testimony, on February 11th, 2021, the jury delivered their verdict. Pavel Relowich was found guilty of raping and murdering Libby Squire. He was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 27 years before he could even think about parole. The judge called out the brutality of the crime and how Relowich had robbed Libby not just of her life, but of her future. In the courtroom, Libby's family sat silently, tears streaming down their faces. Justice was done, but it couldn't bring her back. After the verdict, Relowich's wife, Jagoda, filed for divorce and moved back to Poland with their kids, cutting ties with the man who'd destroyed so much. For many, the sentence was a small comfort, but it raised questions. Is 27 years enough for a crime this heinous? And if Relowich gets out in his 50s, will he still be a threat? Libby Squire's death wasn't just a personal tragedy. It was a wake-up call about the dangers women face every day. After Pavel Relowich's conviction, Libby's family, especially her mom, Lisa, turned their grief into action. They refused to let Libby's death be just another sad story on the news. Instead, they've been fighting to make sure no one else endures what she did. Let's look at the ripple effects of this case and how Libby's family is changing the world. For Lisa and Russell, losing Libby was a pain that'll never fade. She wasn't just their oldest daughter. She was their light, always ready with a laugh and a helping hand, with a bright future ahead. When her body was found, their hearts shattered. But instead of letting despair win, Lisa channeled her pain into purpose. She launched a campaign to raise awareness about sexual crimes, especially non-contact ones like flashing or voyeurism that often get brushed off. Lisa saw that these behaviors, while dismissed as minor, can signal something far worse. Relowich had been pulling his creepy stunts for years without punishment. If those acts had been taken seriously, Libby might still be here. Lisa argues that crimes like flashing or peeping aren't just unsettling, they can escalate to violence, like they did with her daughter. She's pushing for tougher laws and for police to treat these reports with the urgency they deserve. Her campaign isn't just local to Hull. Lisa connected Libby's case to others, like the murder of Sarah Everard in 2021. Sarah, like Libby, was a young woman attacked while walking alone. Her killer, Wayne Cousins, was a cop with a history of creepy behavior that went unchecked until he struck. Lisa points out that predators like Relowich and Cousins often start small before going bigger. By ignoring those early signs, society gives them a free pass to hurt more people. Lisa's efforts have gotten major attention. She's been on TV sharing Libby's story and demanding change. She stresses that violence against women isn't just the victim's problem, it's on all of us. People need to speak up, report suspicious behavior, and make sure offenders face consequences before it's too late. Her message is clear. No one should live in fear, and no family should endure the pain she's carrying. The Hull community's stepped up too. Regular memorials for Libby keep her memory alive, and locals have joined campaigns to boost women's safety. Above all, Libby's legacy is a reminder that we can't stay silent about harmless, creepy behavior. Lisa and her family are fighting to ensure Libby's story saves lives, and that's the one ray of light in this dark tragedy. We've just walked through a gut-wrenching journey, from the story of Libby Squire, a young woman full of dreams, to the tragedy that stole her life. This case isn't just about a crime. It's a stark reminder of the dangers women face and why we need to act before it's too late. I hope Libby's story hit you as hard as it did me while I was digging into it. Before we close out, let's take a moment to reflect on what her story means and how we can keep her message alive. Thanks for joining me on this episode of True Crime Revealed. I know these stories aren't easy to hear, but they matter. They remind us that behind every case is a person, a family, and a community grappling with loss. If you're hooked on true crime told with heart and respect, hit that subscribe button now. It's totally free, and you'll get a heads up every time I drop a new video, usually once a week. Don't forget to tap the bell icon so you never miss an episode. A huge shout out to our channel members like Dana Elafiel and Brandy Owens for supporting this journey. Want to join them? Becoming a member gets you early access to some videos, sometimes days or weeks before they go public. It's an awesome way to back the channel and keep these stories coming. Just hit the join button below the video or check the link in the description for details. I'm also stoked to share that True Crime Revealed merch is now available. If you want to rock a t-shirt that shows your love for true crime or just want to support the channel, check out the link in the description. There's a bunch of styles and sizes, and I think they're pretty darn cool. It's a way to spread the word about these stories and keep victims like Libby in our hearts. Before you go, I've got another case you'll want to check out, packed with just as many twists. The link's popping up on your screen now, or you can find it in the description. Every story we explore is a chance to learn, empathize, and work toward a safer world. Thanks for spending time with me today, and I hope to see you in the next one. I'm Donna, and I'll catch you later.